The seed has now developed 3 to 4 sets of leaves. It's got a nice root system in the bigger rockwool block. At that point it's ready to be transferred into your system, which basically means you have to get your system ready to receive them. Now, you have the medium, which are clay pebbles. Clay pebbles, through transit and the original process of the manufacture of them, they end up quite dirty, quite dusty. Ideally you want to get rid of all the grit, all the dust, all the debris before putting them into the pods themselves. Now, easy way to do that is simply stab some holes using a big screwdriver into the bottom of them, hose pipe on the top in your garden for at least half an hour. If you can, the longer you do it for, the better. The more dirt, the more grit, the more debris you get off of the pebbles, the better off the pH stability is going to be in your tank. If you haven't got a garden, obviously you've got to use the messy method, which means take it into the shower, open the top up, stick some holes in and shower it, or even stick it in your bath and sieve them out. It is fundamental you do wash the clay, otherwise you end up with a hell of a sediment on the bottom, and every time you disturb the sediment it could alter the pH, which is not what you need. So, wash the clay thoroughly. Once the clay has been washed absolutely thoroughly, it's ready to go into the system. Before putting it in the system, make sure that the grommets, which are in between the pipes, are snugly sat in place. Sometimes in transit these grommets can come out. Now, if you don't have the grommets in place and you put the pebbles in, the pebbles can get down the pipes and it can cause all sorts of troubles with the flood and drain cycle. So just make a quick check that the grommets are in the pipes. If all the grommets are in the pipes, then fill up the pods with the pebbles. If they're not, find the grommets and put them in the right place. Okay. So we've checked the grommets are there, the pebbles are washed, the pebbles then go in the top of the tank onto the pods themselves. You really want to fill them up to the level of the overflow pipe, okay, which will be approximately about 12 litres of clay pebbles. Now I'm just going to put these out of the way. Now, pods are full with pebbles which have been washed. We're then ready to fill the reservoir up with water. Now, a 4-pod reservoir holds approximately 45 litres of water. Now, these are independently housed reservoirs, which means you can fill it up with a bucket or you can fill it up with a hose. They don't need to be plumbed in. So you'd fill the reservoir up to 45 litres of water. We recommend filling to the overflow pipes. At that point, you've got enough space. If you need to adjust up and down with water to dilute the solution, you can do so. Okay, we've washed the clay pebbles, we've checked the grommets are in place, we've filled the pods up with clay to the overflow pipes. Now, we've filled the reservoir up with approximately 45 litres of water. We've then got a pump. The pump connects directly to the downpipe inside the reservoir. It's a submergible pump. Okay? A lot of people don't realise that, ironically, but that's the way it works underneath the water. So what we have is the flow pipe attaches directly to the top of the pump, and the pump sits in the bottom of the water tank. Now, once that's done, you can then test the flood and drain cycles, and it's worth doing this because the bigger the pod system you use, the more time you need to flood the system. On a 4-pod, it should take approximately 1 minute to flood the entire 4 pods. On an 8-pod, it should take approximately 3, sometimes it takes 4. On a 12-pod, it can take 4, sometimes 5 minutes. On a bigger system where it's using outer runs, you can add another minute on because the outer runs have more pipe, which means you need more time to do the flood and drain. What we always recommend doing is an acid test. Basically get the pump in the water, then turn the pump on. Time how long it takes to wet your finger. Put your finger approximately 1 inch beneath the clay pebble surface and physically time how long it takes before your finger becomes wet. It's a very easy acid test to do, but that will give you the precise time you need to do a flood and drain cycle. So, we've got the water in, we've turned the pump on, we're timing how long it takes, and we've discovered it takes 1 minute on a 4-pod. But do test it yourself just to confirm it. Assuming it takes 1 minute to flood the entire system, you then have to program your digital timer. Now this is possibly the hardest bit of the whole equation, is programming one of these little beasties. They're very similar to programming VCR recorders, from 10 years ago, where you have to put the time in, the date in, you then have to program it to come on and off. It does come with full instructions, and if you persevere with them you will understand it. However, we are only a phone call away and we don't mind being questioned about it because we're used to it now. They are not too hard once you get your head around it. But quite simply, what you have to do is, if the 4-pod is taking 1 minute to flood, let's say our light cycle was turning on at 9 o'clock in the morning, then what we would also want is our pump cycle to coincide with it, to turn on at 9 o'clock in the morning. So at 9 o'clock the pump turns on and you program that into your timer, and then at 1 minute past 9 you've programmed to turn the pump off. What we recommend doing on a system of this design, be it a 4-pod, an 8-pod, a 16-pod or a 24-pod, is to flood the system every 3 hours. Every 3 hours until your programs have run out. It should do it basically 24 hours a day. Now, the system only really needs, or the plants only need, water during the lighting cycle. However, we've found that flooding and draining at night does no harm to the plants. However, it does stop the tank from stagnating. It gets oxygen into the water. It keeps the water in motion. The more the water is in motion, the more alive it is. So program your timer to come on every 3 hours for the desired amount of time. And the way you find that desired amount of time out is putting your finger in the system 1 inch beneath the pebbles and timing how long it takes before your finger becomes wet. Just to recap, on a 4-pod it should take 1 minute, on an 8-pod it should take 3 minutes, on a 12-pod it should take 4 to 5 minutes, and if you've got a 16 or a 24-pod that employs outer runs, you want to add another minute on to the outer run. And that's basically how you flood and drain the system, but you do have to turn it on and turn it off, otherwise you end up turning your pod system into a deep trough NFT and you lose the benefit of the flood and drain cycles. Now, once you're happy it's flooding and draining to the desired level every 3 hours, you would then adjust the nutrients in the tank. Now, just like rock wool, you would add the grow nutrient first before adjusting your pH. At this point you're not using the Formulex, the 1-part nutrient, you'll be going on to a 2-part nutrient. Now, 2-part basically means you've got part A and you've got part B. They are dual in nature. The reason you have A and B in separate bottles is because when they're concentrated they conflict. They don't conflict to the same aggressiveness as pH up and pH down. There's no danger in mixing these two together. However, if they do get mixed together in a concentrate, you get nutrient lock, which basically means that the plant will not be able to dissolve the desired nutrients it needs to sustain itself. So when measuring A and B out, use separate measurement containers, separate pipettes or separate measuring cups. Never mix these two together concentrated, otherwise the plant ends up losing out from the nutrient it should get. Now, what we've got is 45 litres of water in the tank. You would then follow the instructions on the side of the bottle. In this case it tells us that it requires 4 ml of A and 4 ml of B to each 1 litre of nutrient tank. Okay? So you put 4 ml in per litre of water in the tank, and you could measure that out and you'll get it somewhere right. Now, on these nutrients, on all bottles of nutrients, they tell you the full dosage rate, i.e. if you had a plant that's 2 to 3 foot tall, strong, in the middle of fruit or flowering, what they're referring to is full strength nutrient on the side of the labels. What you have to do is remember that you're only putting seedlings and cuttings in that actually desire approximately 1/3 to half the nutrient a fully grown plant would want. Therefore, you'd half the dilution ratio it tells you on the side of the bottle. And just to confirm you've got it right, you would then employ TDS meter. Now, what I would personally do is pour a splash in, give it a stir, pour exactly an equal amount of B in and give it a stir. Then I would then test the CF meter until I got to the desired level. Ideally, where you want it is approximately CF of 12, okay, just like the Formulex. You want that level of 12 that will give you just the right amount of nutrient for a young plant, and you keep it on that CF level of 12 until you got the plant approximately 9 inches to 1 foot in height. So to recap, you would half the dilution ratio, put that into your tank, you would then stir the tank, put the meter in to confirm you've got it to the desired level. If you find that the CF reading is too high, you would then add more water into the tank to dissolve the level in order to reduce the CF value. If you find that the CF level is too low, you would then administer an equal amount of A and an equal amount of B into the tank, give it a stir until you got the level to the right number, which in this case for young plants we recommend CF of 12. You can go to 14, so 12 to 14 is approximately where you want it. Once you've balanced the nutrient in the tank and you've got it to the desired CF level, oh, by the way, if you put too much nutrient in the tank, you've obviously got to pump a lot of it out to dilute it down. So you would add a hose pipe to your pump, turn the pump on, pump 1/3 of the tank out, then add normal water in order to dilute the level down. So if it's too low, add more. If it's too high, take it out, add water. Simple. Next. Once you've got the level to approximately 12 to 14, you would then check the pH level. You always do the pH after you do the food because food alters the pH. So there's no point getting the levels right with the pH and then adding food because you're going to find that's going to skew lift the level. So you always do the pH after you've added the food in the tank. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of pH up and pH down. So we then pop the pH meter in, and again the level that we're looking for now will be a pH of 6. So it's slightly higher than the rock wool because the root ball's now migrated through the rock wool and it's now looking to live in the clay pebbles. And ideally, clay pebbles to start with, pH of 6 is approximately where you want it. So, if you found the pH level is high, you administer your pH down in very small amounts, exactly like we did with the rock wool. Always add in little each time until you get it right. Now, once you've got it to a CF or pH level of 6, okay, you would then want to flood and drain the system a few times in order to make sure the reservoir is mixed. There's an override button on the pump, and all you have to do is switch it on. You then let the system flood, and then you switch it off. Give it a couple of minutes and all the water returns back to the reservoir. It will be a fully mixed tank then. You would then test again with your CF level to make sure the food level's right and adjust up or down, bearing in mind what the meter says. After you've done that, you would then check your pH and check your pH level, adjusting up or down as you need it. Now, because the cuttings or seedlings are very young that are going in the system, if you accidentally put too much pH down in and you end up going pH of 5 for example, you're much better off emptying out the tank and starting again than you are using pH up. pH up and down should only be used when a plant is strong enough to cope with them. If you use a lot of pH up and down when your plant is very young, 3 sets of leaves for example, it can do unrepairable damage to the root ball. So if you do take the pH down too far, empty out some water, put some water in, and that hopefully should raise the level up. Start again basically. pH up and down are really only to be used for very fine adjustment. Do never use a lot of it. If you use a lot of it, you end up doing the plants more harm than good. So once you've got the pH level to 6, TDS level to 12, the system's flooding and draining, you're ready to put the plants in the system. What you would do is have a lovely well-rooted plant. Now, you want to administer it, or let's put it in other words. What you want to do is plant it in the system with doing minimal damage to the root ball. Now, an easy way to do that is to turn the pump on, flood the system so all 4 pods are completely saturated with water. At that point you can bury the whole rock wool block into the pebbles without doing much damage to the root ball. What you do have to remember is to take the plastic off of the rock wool block. If you don't take the plastic covering off, it will prohibit the root ball from growing out the side of the rock wool, in so doing restricting the oxygen to the root system. Now, That's one way of doing it, is flooding the system and then burying the rock wool in. The other way of doing it is baling out X amount of clay and then putting it in place and then putting clay on top in order to secure its position. Either way will suffice. I find it a lot easier and quicker just to push it into a flooded system. Now, once it's in place, you'd want a pebble mass just to cover the top of the rock wall itself, i.e. 1 to 2 levels of pebbles. You do not want the rock wall exposed to the light. Because the rock wall is very water retentive, it ends up holding a lot more moisture, and in so doing, when the light's reacting with the moisture, you can get algae breakouts, which isn't too sightly. It's not that detrimental to the plant, but it can encourage all sorts of unwanted disease and bacteria and that sort of thing. So if you bury it beneath the clay pebbles, the pebbles act as a barrier to the light reacting with the moisture in the rock wall. Now, you would then at that point look to lower the light, possibly by 1 foot. Originally you had the light 3 to 4 foot away from the canopy of the propagator. At this point now you'd want to be 3 to 2 foot away from the canopy of the plant. So you would raise it or lower it slightly, but you wouldn't want to drop it 1 foot instantly. Okay? If you dropped it 1 foot overnight, the plants could go into shock, so you gradually do it over the course of a week, a couple of inches a day. There's a very easy acid test to find out exactly how close you can get the light to the plant, and that's simply the back of your hand. If you raise your back of the hand up to the lamp itself, as soon as you feel any radiant heat hitting the back of the lamp, or the back of your hand, that is approximately how close you can get the light to the canopy without killing it. However, on seedlings and cuttings and young plants, you have to overcompensate that. To give you an example, if you had a plant that's approximately 2 foot tall and strong and bushy and really having the lust of life, you would then lift your hand up to the back of the light until you felt the radiant heat, and then you get that as close as you can get your hand to it without burning your hand, without feeling that heat. When they're this big, you still want the light a good 3 foot away from the canopy of the plant. The plant will then grow up. As the plant's growing up, you want to be bringing the light down. So the plant's growing up, the light's coming down. Till you get to a point where you can't get the light any closer to the plant without burning it. Then the plant goes up and so does your light. Now, at this point, what we recommend doing is raising the plant to approximately a foot and a half tall on your grow A and B nutrient. Okay, you're on a photo period of approximately 18 to 20 hours a day, and you're using the grow continuously through that period, always keeping the CF level to around 12 to 14, always keeping the pH level to approximately 6. You can let the pH raise to 6.5 and then knock it back to 6, then let it raise to 6.5 and then knock it back, but always maintaining it around 6. Now, once they're a foot and a half tall, you can then basically change your nutrient solution to bloom, or it's also known as floras, it's also known as flower, which is a different stock solution. You'll also then change your lighting period down to 12 hours on, 12 hours off. 12 hours on, 12 hours off in most species of plant will induce the fruit or flowering phase. What the plant thinks is happening is the summer's coming to an end, the nights are drawing in, and they're forced to reproduce. So what you are basically doing is tricking the plant into thinking that the summer and winter is coming on strong, i.e. the summer's ending, winter's coming, we better reproduce our fruit or flowers. And a 12-hour photo period in most plants will induce it to fruit or flower. Now, when you've got onto the 12-hour light period, you'll then want to go on to, instead of grow nutrient, you'd go on to bloom nutrient. Bloom nutrient, you have bloom A, you have bloom B, dual pack nutrient. Again, you administer exact amount of A into the reservoir and exact amount of B in the reservoir. Now, you would only use bloom A and bloom B when you've got to the plant at least foot and a half tall and you're on a 12-hour photo cycle, or if the plants are showing signs of fruit or flowering. Now, at this point, the plants need more nourishment. Okay, we've been underfeeding them on purpose in order to make them hungry, so at this point they can suck up more of what they need. What we'd recommend now is to raise the CF level in your tank to approximately 18. So you're going from 12 to 14 to approximately 18 to 20. Okay, so what you would then do is administer more A and more B into your tank. You're almost on full strength as per the instructions on the side of the bottle, but not yet. Almost, probably about 80 to 90% strength. In so doing, you then still maintain the pH level to 6 to 6.5. Okay, now it's good practice every now and then, approximately 3 to 4 weeks, to do a nutrient tank flush. To put that in layman's terms, to empty out the tank, put fresh water in and start again. It's not a necessity, however it is highly advisable. Easy way to empty out the tank is just attach the hose pipe to the pump, turn the pump on and empty it out. What a lot of hydroponicists would also recommend is running nothing but pH adjusted water in your system for a day. In so doing, it flushes any dead salts, any unused salts out of the media back into the reservoir. But you do have to adjust the water, pH adjust it to approximately 6. So let's say on this bloom cycle, 3 to 4 weeks in, you've said let's get rid of the tank, empty it out and start again. Does that make sense? Right, now it's good practice to do that at least once a month. However, with known situations, we've even done it ourselves, where we've not flushed the tank at all, not for the whole crop, not even for 2 crops. You can get away with not doing it. However, a Puritan hydroponicist would say, do it every 2 weeks, do it every 3 weeks. And it's not a necessity, but it is, well, it can help the plants. But if you are lazy, you don't have to. Now, we've put bloom A and B into the tank to a CF level of 18 to 20. We've then adjusted the tank to 6 pH level, and we're still flooding and draining. At this point, we've got the light as close as we can to the plants without burning them. Now, what you will find is some plants are going to grow quicker than other plants. It's the law of nature. You always get some that are stronger than others. The ones that are taller, we recommend highly pinching them out, either chopping the tops off or taking the centre tip out of the plant. In so doing, it encourages the side growth of the plant instead of the centre growth. That will allow the smaller plants to catch up in height. And again, keep on doing it. The name of the game in hydroponics is to get that light as close as you can to all the plants. If you get a few that bolt, that are growing taller than the others, you have to chop them back. You've got to be cruel to be kind. Because if they bolt and you end up lifting the light up because they're growing so tall, the others are then going to elongate and stretch because the light isn't close enough to them. And in so doing, the tall plants will benefit and the little plants won't be worth growing at all. Okay, now the plants are going to continuously grow and the light is going to continuously go up with the plant's growth. Ideally, you want to keep the crop even, the light down as close as you can to all the plants, and let the plants grow and the light evolve as the plants grow. Now, approximately 5 weeks into the bloom cycle, into the fruiting cycle, i.e. a 12-hour lighting scheme, you would want to administer some solution called PK1314. It's a bloom stimulant, a fruiting boost stimulant. Now, plants only require this PK1314 during the 5th week of the 12-hour lighting cycle. So when you go into your blooming stage, when you start using your bloom food and you first initiate your 12-hour light cycle, you must write down the date, because 5 weeks into that cycle you want to add to your nutrient tank the PK1314. Some species of plants take longer to fruit or flower. When you administer the PK1314, it's approximately 3 weeks before harvest of your plants. You follow the instructions on the back of the bottle and go in full strength, but never exceeding a CF level of 22 to 24. So you would add your stock solution, your bloom, you then add your PK1314, get it to a level of around 22 to 24. If it's below that level, you'd add more bloom A and B. Okay, if you do end up administering too much nutrient into the tank, bleed some of it off and start again using the PK1314 first as your primary nutrient. Again, once that's in the tank, reduce the pH level down to approximately 6. You'd use the PK1314 or bloom stimulant for approximately 1 week. Okay, so once you add it to the tank, you use it for the 1 week and 1 week only. You wouldn't administer it again. You will find at this point, 3 weeks before harvest, the plants are going to be sucking up a whole tank, at least a tank a week. So you're going to be filling that tank up possibly on a daily or a bi-daily basis. And once you've filled it up over the course of the week, then go back onto your Bloom A and your Bloom B, not using your PK1314 anymore. At that point, when you're 1 week away from harvesting, 1 week away from cropping your plants, what we highly recommend doing is emptying out the reservoir, filling the reservoir up with nothing but clean water, pH adjust it to pH of 6, and then feed the plants nothing but clean water for 1 week. This is what they call flushing. It benefits multi-levels. One, it benefits the system because it gets rid of any nutrient build-up in the pebbles themselves. Two, it benefits the plant because it actually encourages the plant to take all the nutrient out of it itself. If you're growing fruit or veg or any plant that's consumed, if you don't flush it at the end in a hydroponic system, you end up with an excessive amount of nutrient build-up in the plant, and that can make the plant taste quite bitter. So it's fundamental to flush the system and the plants for 1 week before harvest. And at that point, you're ready to crop the plants and start again. Job done. Once you've harvested your plants, you end up with a lot of root system in your pebbles. Now, what we recommend doing is flooding the system, pulling the majority of the root ball out. You can empty out the pods and disinfect it, but use an easier way around that. You take the majority of the root ball out, you then add a nutrient into the tank called canazyme. Canazyme has active enzymes that dissolve dead root systems. They turn those root systems into food for the next crop. So if you don't want to get all messy and sweaty, take the majority of the root ball out and then put a good strong dose of canazyme into the tank and flood and drain it every 3 hours like you used to. You can then plant on top of that existing root system, as well as not having to worry about changing the reservoir. We do, however, recommend before you use the canazyme is to use a very strong H2O2, hydrogen peroxide bleach, to disinfect the system in between crops. Disinfecting it will discourage any diseases of any description. So, firstly, remove the root ball, the majority of it. You then add H2O2 to the tank, you flood and drain that, you then bleed that H2O2 off, add new water using canazyme, and then at that point you can plant on top of your existing system. And that's how you would start again. Now,